You think you know this case. You don't. For months, people have been talking about this story like they understand it, like they've got all figured out. A teacher, a student, messages, an arrest, case closed, right? That's what everyone thought. That's what I thought. Until I started looking deeper. Until I realized that what we were all told in the beginning wasn't even close to the whole truth. This wasn't a case that escalated overnight. This is a case that was misunderstood from the very beginning. And what came out later, it doesn't just change the charges. It changes everything. On this channel, we don't do gossip. We don't do speculation. We do accountability. We look at the institutions we trust every single day, the schools, the systems, the people we put our faith in, and we ask the hard questions when something goes wrong. Because this story, it's not just about one person. It's about how betrayal happens in plain sight. It's about how systems fail to protect the most vulnerable among us. And it's about why we need to pay attention before it's too late. So let's be clear from the start. This is serious. This is investigative. And this matters. Here's what the public originally knew. A teacher, a student, online communication, that cross a line, an arrest during an attempted meetup. That's how it was framed. That's the version that made the news. That's the story everyone shared. And on the surface, it sounded straightforward, inappropriate, wrong, illegal, but contained. Like it was one mistake, one bad decision, one moment of weakness. That's the version most people heard. That's the version most people still believe. But here's what no one was asking. Was this really just about messages? Think about it. Think about how these cases usually work. Someone gets arrested. Charges get filed. The public hears about it. We react. We move on. But what happens behind the scenes? What happens when investigators actually start digging? When they talk to witnesses? When they pull records? When they build a timeline? Early charges often don't reflect the full scope of what happened. They reflect what can be proven immediately, what's visible on the surface, the tip of the iceberg. So here's the question that should have been asked from day one. If this was serious enough to end in an arrest at a meetup location, what else was going on that we didn't know about? That question, that's your narrative engine. That's what drives everything that came next. And then came the grand jury. For those who don't know, a grand jury isn't just a formality. It's not rubber stamping what police already found. A grand jury hears evidence. They review testimony. They look at patterns. And then they decide, do these allegations warrant formal charges? When a grand jury hands down an indictment, it's a legal reset. It means prosecutors brought more to the table. It means the case is bigger than what was initially visible. And in this case, the indictment didn't just add charges. It revealed something that should make every single one of us pay attention. These charges suggest prior conduct, not spontaneous behavior, not a one-time lapse in judgment. Prior, ongoing, calculated. Let me break down what that indictment actually said, not in legal jargon, but in terms that matter. There are allegations of physical harm, not just words, not just digital boundaries crossed. Physical acts. With a child, there are allegations rooted in power imbalance. This wasn't two peers. This was an adult in a position of authority and a minor who trusted that authority. And here's the part that burns. There are charges that hinge on the victim's age. Specific, deliberate age-based severity. Because the younger the victim, the more heinous the crime. The law recognizes that. The charges reflect that. I'm not listing these to shock you. I'm listing them to educate you. Because if we don't understand what these charges mean, we can't understand what allegedly happened. And if we don't understand what allegedly happened, we can't protect anyone else. Now, let's talk about the timeline. Not in a straight line, because that's not how these things unfold. Let's talk about it in layers. Layer 1, the school day. But this wasn't normal school day, was it? This was remote instruction, online learning. A teacher and a student, alone in a digital room, with no physical oversight, no other adults in the hallway, no principal walking by, no colleague popping in to ask a question, one-on-one access, anytime, from anywhere. Layer 2, the digital shift. At some point, Communication moved beyond academics. It stopped being about assignments and started being about something else. Messages got personal. Conversations got private. Boundaries that should have been rock solid started to blur. And here's the thing about that environment. It's invisible. Parents can't see it. Administrators can't monitor it the same way. It's just two people and a screen. Layer 3, law enforcement intervention. Authorities became aware. We don't know exactly how yet, whether it was a report from the family, a tip, a digital trace, but they became aware. And the timing matters. Because once law enforcement steps in, the clock starts ticking differently. Evidence gets preserved. Patterns get documented. And the truth starts coming out. And we need to talk about why remote learning matters here. Not because technology is bad. Not because online education is inherently dangerous. But because every tool we use has vulnerabilities. And when we don't build in safeguards, those vulnerabilities get exploited. Remote learning expands access. That's good. It means students who can't be physically present can still learn. But it also reduces visibility. There's no oversight in a virtual classroom the same way there is in a physical one. And when boundaries are already fragile, that invisibility becomes a risk. This isn't anti-technology. This is pro-safety. This is about acknowledging that when we change how education happens, we have to change how we protect kids too. Let's talk about the trust gap. On one side, you have a professional role, a teacher, someone parents trust, someone students look up to, someone the system vetted, hired, and placed in a position of influence. On the other side, you have public perception. We assume that people in these roles will do the right thing. We assume that if someone passes a background check and gets hired, they're safe. We assume that trust is earned and maintained. And then you have the private allegations, the things that allegedly happen behind closed doors, behind screens, in spaces where no one else was watching. I'm not here to judge character. I'm here to examine systems. And what this case exposes is a gap, a trust gap, because positions of trust don't fail loudly. They fail quietly. They fail in whispers and private messages and moments no one else sees. And by the time the failure becomes public, the damage is already done. Now, I want to bring in an expert voice, someone who's been inside the system, a former prosecutor who's handled cases like this, someone who can help us understand what these charges actually mean and why they matter. This isn't about judgment. This is about interpretation. This is about understanding the legal framework so we can grasp the human impact. So, why do these new charges change everything? Because severity matters. A charge involving a minor under a certain age carries different weight than one involving an older teen. The law recognizes that younger children are more vulnerable, less able to consent, less able to understand manipulation. And when you add authority dynamics, teacher and student, the severity compounds. Because it's not just about age. It's about power, about who holds it and who doesn't. The sentencing exposure changes dramatically with these charges. We're not talking about months. We're talking about years, potentially decades. Because the legal system treats harm against children, especially by those in authority, as among the most serious offenses. Let's talk about grooming. But I'm not going to use that word right away. I want you to understand the behaviors first. It starts with attention, extra help, special treatment, making a child feel seen and valued. Then it shifts. Conversations get more personal. Boundaries get tested just a little at first. A compliment that's slightly too familiar. A message sent late at night. A comment that feels off. And then it escalates. Slowly, incrementally. So slowly that the child doesn't realize what's happening. So incrementally that even if they feel uncomfortable, they can't quite name why. That's grooming. That's the pattern. And the reason it often goes unnoticed is because it doesn't look sinister from the outside. It looks like mentorship. It looks like a teacher who cares. Until it doesn't. Language is a tool. And in the hands of someone with bad intentions, it's a weapon. Adults who prey on children adapt their language. They talk like the child talks. They use the child's references, their slang, their cultural touchstones. They make themselves feel safe, familiar, like a friend, not an authority figure. And that familiarity It's not accidental. It's calculated. It's designed to break down the natural wariness a child should have around an adult. It's designed to make the child feel special, understood, chosen. This matters legally because it speaks to intent. It matters psychologically because it explains why victims often don't recognize abuse while it's happening. People always ask the same question: how did no one see this coming? She didn't fit the profile. No prior complaints. No red flags. Clean record. Good evaluations. But here's the truth. Those beliefs are exactly why intervention gets delayed. Because we're looking for monsters. And predators don't look like monsters. They look like us. They look professional, competent, trustworthy. And the absence of prior complaints doesn't mean the absence of prior behavior. It means no one reported it. No one knew. No one was watching closely enough. Let's be clear about legal rights, because this matters. Presumption of innocence exists for a reason. Everyone is entitled to due process, to defense, to their day in court. But here's what people need to understand. Early admissions don't equal full disclosure. If someone admits to part of what happened, that doesn't mean that's all that happened. It means that's all they were willing to admit to at that moment. I can reinforce fairness while still taking these allegations seriously. Those two things are not in conflict. Let's talk about how the school system responded. Reassignment happened for a reason. When allegations surface, an employee gets removed from student contact while the investigation unfolds. That's not punishment. That's precaution. But here's why it frustrates families. Because it feels like nothing is happening. Because the person is still employed, still getting paid, still technically part of the system. And to a parent whose child was allegedly harmed, that feels like injustice. But due process exists to protect everyone, including those who are falsely accused. The system has to balance public expectation with legal reality, and that balance is uncomfortable. But it's necessary. The long-term consequences of a case like this don't end with a verdict. For the child involved, the impact is lifelong. Therapy, trust issues, educational disruption. The weight of having your trauma become public record. For educational trust, it's a fracture. Parents start questioning. Teachers feel scrutinized. Students wonder who's safe. The whole ecosystem shifts. And for the community, there's fallout, division, anger, confusion. Because some people believe immediately, and some people refuse to believe at all. And that split creates wounds that don't heal quickly. Here's what still isn't known. Prosecutors haven't said everything. Investigations unfold in stages. Evidence gets presented when it's time, not before. Witnesses get protected. Details get sealed. And silence doesn't mean absence. Just because we don't know something publicly doesn't mean investigators don't know it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. So where does the case stand now? The accused is in custody. Court dates are scheduled. Procedurally, the case is moving forward through the system the way these cases do. Slowly, deliberately, with layers of review at every step. What happens next depends on evidence, testimony, legal strategy, and a dozen other factors we can't predict from the outside. But here's what I want you to take away from this. This case isn't just about one teacher. It's not just about one student. It's not even just about one school. It's about how systems detect harm, or miss it. It's about how we build safeguards, or fail to. It's about whether we're paying attention to the warning signs, or waiting until it's too late. I don't want you to walk away from this angry at one person. I want you to walk away from this aware. Aware of how these things happen. Aware of what to look for. Aware of why it matters that we demand accountability from the institutions we trust. Because the next case, it's already forming. Somewhere, in some school, in some digital classroom, in some interaction that looks innocent but isn't. And whether it gets stopped before harm happens depends on whether we're watching. If you want to follow updates on this case, stay subscribed. I'll keep covering it as new information emerges. But I'm going to do it the right way, with facts, with context, with respect for everyone involved. Thank you for watching, and please stay aware.